At one time, Antoine Griezmann was a Ballon d'Or contender. The glory that he helped bring to Atletico alongside Diego Simeone, as well as his performances for France, led to Griezmann being considered one of the top players of his generation, and yet another elite player who has the misfortune of competing for individual accolades during the Messi and Ronaldo era. However, with his move to FC Barcelona in 2019, not only did his play suffer, along with plenty of other Barcelona signings at the time, but he damaged his reputation amongst those who loved him most, Atleti supporters. But if you were to ask most Atletico supporters today how they feel about Griezmann, both his actions and words off of the pitch coupled with his performances on it, well, most, not all, but most of them wouldn't hesitate to say that he's forgiven. For both France and Atletico this season, Antoine Griezmann has reached elite levels that he hasn't touched since probably 2018, while simultaneously mending his relationship with Atleti's supporters. Hey guys, I hope you're well. I'm Adrian and welcome to Rabona TV. Today we have a special guest to discuss the Antoine Griezmann Renaissance. Friend of the channel, Jeremy Barron of Into the Calderon, an English Atleti blog, and editor for Marca. He'll provide invaluable insight on Griezmann and Atleti and how both of them have changed over the years. Shall we? Things were disastrous for Griezmann at Barcelona, as they were for almost everyone, given what Bartomeu had done to the club and their finances. And so when a return to Atletico was on the cards, and given how difficult he found life at the Camp Nou, no doubt most people thought that Griezmann's return to the then defending champions would play out swimmingly. However, that didn't happen, did it?
It was very disappointing, frankly, because he comes back on deadline day. It had been rumored earlier in the summer that Atletico were going to try to get Griezmann back, knowing that Barcelona were in such a perilous financial state, knowing that Griezmann wasn't particularly happy there. And it's not even a permanent transfer. It's a loan deal, which complicates things. You can contingent on, within the loan, is this obligation to buy based on minutes played, games, appearances. It further complicates things. And that's off the pitch. On the pitch, Griezmann is now part of a forward quintet with Luis Suarez, Angel Correa, Joao Felix, and Mateus Cunha. All these players need minutes, right? So it was very difficult for Simeone to juggle all these players and their needs, and for Griezmann as well, who comes back into a very different team from the one he left. The Atletico team he left was dependent completely on him. The one he rejoined was a more balanced effort. So Griezmann comes back into this team that now is severely imbalanced. He starts slowly. He gets injured in a Madrid derby when Dani Carvajal goes in on him in a tough challenge. He plays one game in 2 months between December and February, and he's just not contributing very much. He finished the season with 3 goals and 4 assists in about 1,700 minutes, which is, given his reputation and given what it took to bring him back, is really disappointing. He ended the season fairly well. I think the second leg of the Champions League tie with Man United was probably his best performance all season. He played great that night. And he ended the season in pretty good form, generating good feelings entering this season. But yeah, last season was really tough to watch.
Injuries didn't help his return season. According to journalist Dermot Corrigan, the training sessions at Barcelona weren't as demanding as Atletico Madrid's legendary fitness trainer Oscar Ortega's, El Profe, as he's affectionately called. Because of this, Griezmann was starting to pick up injuries that consistently derailed his progress at Atletico, as mentioned by Jeremy. But after a season under his belt, he is healthy and finding form once again. His fitness and determination to change the hearts of those who resented him for his Barcelona move has brought the fantastic performances that we've seen from Griezmann at Atletico this season. Oh, and for the French national team, but we'll get to that later. There was a lot of confusion surrounding Antoine Griezmann's loan to Atleti from Barcelona when it was first announced. Was there an obligation to purchase Griezmann at the end of the 2 years? Yes? Well then, what were the terms, and for how much? Even Atleti and Barca couldn't agree on them, and the biggest victim of that was Antoine Griezmann. Remember how he would only come off of the bench in each match for about 30 minutes or so? Strange times, especially for someone of Griezmann's stature. No doubt he would have been in a tough place mentally. You're coming off of the Barcelona nightmare. You return to the club you love, where plenty of fans are still furious with you and don't want you there. And your playing time has been limited ahead of your next big international tournament, the World Cup. And then on top of all of that, your team is dropping out of competitions for fun in the first half of the season. Is that just a glass half empty look at it though?
in a positive sense and in a negative sense, Adrian, it's been a really weird season. It's ending it on a really high note, though, because we have literally been the joint best team in La Liga since the World Cup. There's hope and optimism, however cautious, that next year Atletico can challenge for the title. And that is just a sea change from where we were even in February, where we're out of every competition, including the Copa del Rey. We're still fighting to finish top 4. Simeone's future is up in the air. And to a degree, that's still true. But the feelings are much more optimistic than pessimistic now. It's been really weird but entertaining to follow, which in a sense makes it uniquely Atleti.
So just how good have they been since February? Well, just 2 losses in 17 matches isn't so bad for a start, with 3 draws sprinkled in there as well. But looking past just the wins or losses, the style of football they are playing isn't that of which you would expect of them. 6-1 over Sevilla, 3-0 over Valencia, 5-2 over Valladolid, 5-1 over Cadiz, 3-0 over Osasuna. Sure, some will point to the level of their opponents, but that would be missing an important component of what makes this impressive. These are teams and matches that Atleti would typically labor to victory against in the recent past, but they are either steamrolling them now or getting what we love to see as football fans, a routine win. Well, bar their recent result against Espanyol, which was looking like vintage autumn 2022 Atleti. As Jeremy mentioned, the first part of the season was dreadful. Virtually out of the title race by October, out of Europe completely after finishing bottom of their Champions League group, out of the Copa del Rey in late January. It wasn't looking good. By the time the World Cup break had come around, they had played 21 matches in their season, winning just 9 of them, drawing 5 and losing 7. That's a winning percentage of just 42.8%. This Atleti side seemed to have lost their identity, and this wasn't just this season, it had been over the previous season as well, where their identity had previously been as clear as day under Simeone. They looked like a washed out version of themselves, like they were trying to be something that they were not with all of the attacking talent that they were signing. Some signings that perhaps Simeone hadn't asked for, but doubt Simeone at your own peril. I mean, I put my hands up and admit that prior to the World Cup, I didn't know whether he'd be the Atletico manager next season. I was wrong about that. I mean, I think, bar any unexpected news over the summer, of course, but he has once again evolved.
The evolution has really been in fits and starts, and this has been true for several years. Simeone will try to take us forward, or the club will sign players who are not of the typical Cholismo mold, and it'll work for a little bit, and then we'll have a couple of bad results, and we'll revert to type. The evolution has really been stop-start, and even since the title-winning season of 2021, Simeone has tried to evolve us further. We played a lot in a 3-4-3 last year because the squad was just so imbalanced. We had 5 forwards to 4 center backs, which is never really a good thing to have. This season, I think what's changed, specifically since the winter break and the winter transfer window, is that everyone kind of knows their roles again. Griezmann especially knows his role again. Simeone has gotten us to use the ball better. We have a bit more possession. Hermoso is kind of tucking in to join Koke in a double pivot, which releases some pressure on Koke. He doesn't have to hold the midfield together all by himself anymore. We're enjoying a bit more possession. This is largely a free scoring Atletico, which under Simeone has never really been the case. We've never been as defensive, I think, as a lot of people like to say, but we certainly have never been this offensive juggernaut.
And of course, Griezmann is at the heart of this Atleti offensive juggernaut, as he put it, which is not a title that I thought I would say this season, that's for sure. Yeah. Now, as we went over, early in the season, Antoine Griezmann was a bench boy, but not down to how he was playing, but down to that disagreement that Barca and Atleti had over Griezmann's permanent fee. Because when he was on the pitch for the final 30 minutes of matches, he was still delivering with his goal contributions. Prior to the agreement being reached in October, Griezmann still had 3 goals and 2 assists for a very much struggling Atleti side. Since then, however, from October onward, when he began getting normal amounts of playing time, Griezmann has exploded. As things stand, he is currently on 14 goals and 13 assists. Why'd he have to go and score against Espanyol this week? That ruined the balance of things. But anyways, those numbers are good enough to see him tied for 4th in the goal charts, 9 behind Lewandowski, and he's in 1st in the assist charts by a long shot, really. And basically in any other data point or vertical, he is dominant when compared to his La Liga peers. Key passes per 90, 99th percentile. Expected assists, passes into the final third, 99th percentile. Progressive passes, Ooh, big slip to 97th percentile. He's letting himself go. Through balls, 97th percentile. Goal creating actions, 96th percentile. And the defensive side of things, you won't find many players that contribute as he does statistically, attackers that is. He's in the 94th percentile for tackles per 90, in the 92nd for tackles won, 96th for interceptions, and on it goes. So what changed from last season to this one?
When Joao Felix was still at the club, Griezmann was playing more as number 8, as an interior midfielder. We saw that a bit toward the end of last season. We saw it a lot in the preseason. And early this season, Griezmann would play in the midfield behind 2 forwards instead of just one. Griezmann started this season in tremendous form, even playing in a position that wasn't naturally his. This is the role that he played so well for France at the World Cup, where he was arguably the best player in the tournament. And once Joao Felix left the club in January, Griezmann returned more or less permanently to the role that we saw him thrive in during his first stint, behind a number 9, dropping into midfield or even into defense to progress the play or to win the ball and start a counterattack. Griezmann isn't scoring as many goals as he used to. This is a guy who put together seasons where he'd scored 25, 30 goals. He's not quite that player anymore, but he's improved as a passer. He has a career high in assists this season and is likely to end the year as LaLiga's assists champion, which was very unexpected. Not that Griezmann was never a selfish player. He was very unselfish. He's linking everything together in arguably an even more decisive way than he did in his first stint when he was a Ballon d'Or contender.
And what Jeremy said about him dropping deep and contributing defensively, anyone who watched France at the World Cup will have seen this numerous times. This sort of cholismo, I guess, that has been ingrained into Griezmann to put in the work on every single part of the pitch. Against the likes of Morocco, I remember him in France's own 6-yard box contributing to defense. And this was from open play. This wasn't from Griezmann standing at the near post during a set piece or something. The man was all over the pitch and was perhaps France's best player in the tournament. I know Mbappe will steal the limelight, of course, and he's brilliant. Of course he is. But you could argue that Griezmann was their most important player, both for his performances, work rate, and leadership that he exhibited. And speaking of the spirit of El Cholo living in Griezmann, why is it that he's become the Firebrand manager's most successful disciple?
Griezmann is a very intelligent player. He's a very charismatic player. He's certainly matured relative to his mid-20s, which I think is true of a lot of people in a lot of different walks of life. But in this context, Griezmann has stepped up and is much more of a leader and is much more of a force that other players gravitate toward and seek inspiration and motivation from. What makes Griezmann so unique and such a perfect fit for Simeone and Cholismo is that he not only listens to the coach, he absorbs what the coach is telling him. He is buying what the coach is selling.
A player with ridiculous technique and work ethic. What a joy he has been. Now, with how things have transpired between Atletico and Griezmann as he transferred to Barca, it's understandable that he rubbed some supporters the wrong way. For others, he infuriated them and drove them to curse his name whenever they saw him. But with how things have gone so far this season, and with the joy that he has brought them during a season that will be almost completely forgettable as far as competition performance goes, is all forgiven?
The hardcore, Sofios and the old school Atleti fans from the 1980s, the 1970s, maybe even before, I think are always going to hold that against Griezmann, and there will be no full pardon, no forgiveness for Griezmann. And to be fair, to a degree, I understand it, right? Griezmann publicly rejected Barcelona in 2018 via his Decision documentary, and then he restarts negotiations with them behind our backs later that year, and then joins them the following year, reportedly agrees to a contract with them while we are playing Juventus in the Champions League. I get it. I get that for some people there will be no forgiveness because he leaves and joins a title rival basically in the middle of the season. That was harsh. That was cold. But I think for a large portion of the Atleti fan base, there has been forgiveness. Griezmann himself has tried numerous ways to extend an olive branch, and I think it's largely been accepted. When we beat Athletic at San Mamés in October, this was just before Griezmann's permanent return was made official. Griezmann was speaking post-game and said, look, I know people have wanted to hear me say it for a year. I can say it now. I'm sorry for leaving. I'm sorry for the pain and the hurt I've caused. And I hope we can all move forward together and I can repay the faith this club has put in me with goals and assists. And, well, to his credit, he has. He's done and said basically everything right since returning to the club. He's put his head down and gotten to work. I think only Lewandowski has more goal contributions in all of La Liga, in a league that has seen scoring numbers drop, sink like a stone the past 3 years. Griezmann has been absolutely brilliant all year, and that's largely because he's been humble. He's made sacrifices. He took another pay cut to make his permanent transfer from Barcelona a reality. And I think most fans are now looking forward to more years of success with Grizzy.
I think with a lot of football players, I tend to listen to these apologetic type of words with a lot of cynicism. But when you consider all of Griezmann's actions, returning to Atleti, taking pay cuts, plural, by the way, pay cuts, not causing any issues when he was starting on the bench, and then you couple that with his heartfelt, apologetic words toward the Atleti faithful, he's one of the few players where I believe what he's saying. In a sport that's packed with massive egos, Griezmann is a player who could lean into his own ego based on all of the accolades and titles he has won. One of the players where an ego would almost, in a weird way, be justified based on their career. But he has seemingly killed that part of himself since returning to Atletico, put his head down, and went to work like everyone else. He's not above anyone, whether in a group of 11 or 23, even if his level of play certainly has been most of this season. Thanks for watching, guys, and I hope that you enjoyed this video. Another big thank you to Jeremy for joining me. Always a pleasure speaking with you, man, and I can't wait to do it again soon. Beyond that, I'm Adrian. Enjoy the football, and we'll see you in the next video. Take care.